All right, so we are back for the continuation of our critically acclaimed Handover is a Beach Part 1 that we did, right?
Yeah, we need to do a little recap.
We need a little bit of recap. Well, yeah,
Okay.
do a little recap.
Hand it off.
We had a podcast, I don't have the number, 3 or 4 weeks ago, about Handover, and we laid it out. We've kind of redrawn it a little bit more simplified than we had, but we were describing the scenario of the EPC contractor on a major project, and we're going to focus on more of like the greenfield new project. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Ralph? And then the owner-operator side. And ultimately, the owner-operator is eventually working toward a place where they have their documents and their data, and it has to be somewhat integrated with asset management and with operations and maintenance. And those things have to work together. And there are some challenges in the industry, specifically around receiving the information and getting it over here onto this side. And those challenges were the technology, meaning, and we're talking about handover, like we're talking like the end of the project, all of the documentation, the blueprints, the design drawings, everything, and getting those moved over. And one problem with that is whatever smart tool technology, and I haven't drawn an engineering data workspace here yet. We'll draw that in a minute. But whatever smart tool technology is this side ready to receive that. So if there's a complex database system or software, are you ready to receive the tech? So that's one thing. The second is the timeline, because in between the engineering and the operations, there is a construction phase and there's a startup phase. So a lot of this information gets pulled early. And so it gets pulled through the easiest means available. So the timeline is a problem because the handover then sort of lags behind and the data starts getting used before it's officially handed over.
Yep.
And then the application and data strategy that is set forth on this side sometimes isn't really got a great vision for handover. You allow different strategies, different formats, different starting points. And so a lot of times there just really isn't a strategy.
Well, what they're trying to do, right, is execute the project, get it done, and get it built.
Correct.
Yeah.
And this isn't really on their mind.
Yeah, operations isn't on their mind. So they as far as handover to them, normally what is their strategy is hey, here's all the stuff. It was designed, it was engineered, it was built, and we started it. Here's the stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Not here's the stuff, so now you can maintain it for the next 50 years.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the strategy there may not really be forward looking to what the owner needs. And then the fourth, and we have these problems or these challenges across the top. The fourth is the contract, meaning when this project idea came about and it was funded, there's a contract signed between the owner and the EPC. And because you've got a long timeline in between those two, and that contract is early, and the people involved in that are probably very high level, the details of this handover and the details of a 3D model, a smart P&ID, a smart database, those things may not really be known to that contract team. So they might leave the language rather ambiguous or leave it open to interpretation. And so when you get to the end of the job and you say, hey, I really want to get all of the great stuff that was done, the contract language may not support you, right? You may go back and look and like, hey, turns out, we already gave you the files. That's good enough. We've met the contract.
Yeah.
And there's always cost involved, right? Because maybe the reason is not necessarily that the EPC wants to hold anything back, but they may be out of money. They don't have time to go grab backups, clean up databases, do anything. They say, technically, we've met the contract. We're not going to spend any more time on this, so we're good.
Yep.
So those are the 4 challenges. When we say handover is a beach, those are the reasons why it's tough. Is that right?
High level reasons. Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
Okay. Now, the the thing missing from this diagram that we believe is an important part of it is more of a shared workspace for the engineering work to be done. And that's not exactly document control, but it is related to document control. Is that right? So I think now the purpose that was part one, is we laid out the idea that, okay, handover is difficult, and specifically handover of these complex engineering systems. And then we're going to come back today and explain what are some of the solutions that we're seeing in the industry, right?
That's what everybody wants to hear.
Okay, that is what the audience is pining for, right?
What are the solutions? How are you going to solve this beach of a problem?
Yeah. So I'm going to draw an engineering data workspace that kind of bridges that gap. Okay. And what we're talking about there are systems where you can actually host it and log into it and do work in a common system that really doesn't require handover. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. I mean, first, I would think what is in this engineering data workspace? Like what actually belongs in that? What work is done in there? How does it benefit the EPC? How does it benefit the owner or the vendors? Is kind of where I would think that discussion would go. And then from there and this is the one aspect that you pointed out that I think always hits after you kind of define what that is as far as your app strategy or your data strategy goes, or your tech strategy, then who owns it is where you're going, right? Like who actually is responsible for the maintenance and ownership of that space?
Yeah, and where we're seeing the most momentum and the most success is that workspace is really an owner controlled workspace.
Yeah, I would say it needs to be owner controlled, and that could be two different ways. That could be owner controlled, meaning they control every aspect of it from the IT side of it all the way down to the support and maintenance side of it. It's 100% controlled by them, or it could be like a third party owner representative controlled. Right?
Yeah, and you said what's in that. I'm talking like the project 3D model, the project smart P&ID database, the project instrumentation database, the project equipment list. Those sorts of things would be authored in that workspace, and that helps you solve a couple of problems.
Yeah, I would say that could go possibly. I don't know what red marker you were using. This one?
Maybe.
Hopefully.
There you go.
I'm going to come out here. That could go possibly. So you'd have a bucket for your engineering design tools, right? So like you're saying, that would be like your 3D space, your P&ID, that would be your instrument, electrical.
Equipment.
This one doesn't look as fancy as yours. Electrical. I don't know if you can see that very well. I'm going to switch markers real quick.
Okay.
But also, what about all of the other aspects of it? Oh, that one looks gorgeous. Look how brilliant that looks. What about all the other aspects of it? What about your commissioning stuff? What about your document control, like you were saying earlier? I think there's other aspects within that. And then all of that would wrap up in a strategy for not only the applications that handle that information, but also the data, like how that data is going to flow, how that data is going to flow. How are the EPCs going to work in this environment? How is it going to flow through their authoring of the engineering design data, and then how is that going to go into commissionings or through commissionings and start up into operations? I think all of that belongs in this engineering data workspace.
Yeah, and so these guys are going to connect to it,
Yeah,
and they're going to work in it.
These guys would be connecting to it and working in it, while your operations, depending on your timeline, would also might be connecting into it and working in it. And that could be done through a document control. That could be done through like a maintenance and engineering IT system, group within inside of the owner operator, but they would be accessing the same information.
Yeah, but if you think about it from like a new capital project, first off, a lot of your effort is going to be put in by these parties into this system. This side is really just getting a feel for it.
Yeah.
But the good part is it's already built with them in mind. So the data structure's already there to support what they're wanting to do. The formats are already there, what they're wanting to do. I'll use an example like a PNID. So if this owner has a particular look and feel of a PNID, the border they expect, the symbology they expect, the tag naming they expect, well, that's going to be valuable to the operations and maintenance team. It's going to be needed in their procedures, work orders, troubleshooting, all of that. It's going to be valuable to the asset management team. And so by having all of that built out in this engineering data workspace and then allowing these contractor parties to do work in there, what you're doing is you're setting the groundwork for success. Like you're establishing the boundaries and the rules of the game. Does that make sense? And so you're allowing the technology early that most of the work, admittedly, is going to come from the EPC side. It's just you're more prepared to receive it, and then there's a shift at some point where all they're doing is tidying up the last little bit of their project, and over here we're ready to run with it.
Yeah, 100% agree with that, especially in like well, even in a brownfield situation, but in a greenfield situation, if you're just taking a brand new project. At the very beginning, once this environment is set up, once you have a good application and data strategy, 90% of the actual authoring or work will be done by the EPCs or the vendors in this space.
Mm-hmm.
These guys, your owners at that time, might not necessarily even be consumers of the information yet, right? Because they're still creating it, they're still authoring, lots of churn happening in this space. But eventually, as you hit those timelines where you start having to go into commissioning and startups, that's where your owners are going to start coming in. And at that point, what they're going to want to do is start utilizing the information inside of it. So not authoring it, it's still going to be primarily authored over here on this side, but they're going to want to start getting that information into their systems for operations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're over here setting up in a greenfield situation. They're having to reset up their asset management. They're having to reset up some of their ops and maintenance programs, even their document control program. And they're going to want to start feeding that information, preparing to get that information to flow into this.
But they also want this set up in a way that's going to naturally work with those. So it's not only when it's available, it's avoiding the handover problem, which is a whole bunch of different data sets, different formats, different standards being lumped into one product at the end. Like when you set this up, you have to have the expertise to say, I'm going to establish the rules that I want this data to play by. You agree with that?
Oh, yeah. I would say that's why your data app strategy is highly important, because it plays into all that. It has to focus on the strategy of what applications are going to be in this environment, what deliverables or information need to flow with this environment. How are you going to set that up to benefit the EPCs? And how are you going to set that up to then benefit the owner operator? So I would say that's an incredibly important strategy.
Okay, so that's a fairly simple solution. What's the other side of the discussion? Why is this a challenge?
It's a challenge, and I mean, I don't know. Why is it a challenge? I guess it's a challenge for two reasons in my mind. One reason is because a lot of times what happens is is this strategy here is pushed to the side for the timeline or for contract purposes, and so not a lot of thought goes into that until later on. And what I think we're saying here is that strategy needs to be at the forefront of the actual overall project. The other reason is it's a challenge is sometimes sometimes contractors don't want to play in an environment that's not their own. Sometimes they're going to say that they have their own utilities, their own tools that they use that make them more efficient in certain ways. And if they have to play in an environment that's not their own, it's going to cost more money.
Well, yeah, I mean,
during the project execution phase.
right. Yeah, because if you look at it one way, and the owner operator says, "Hey, I have a plan in this world here. I've got your modeling tools set up. I've got your drawing tools. I've got all your database tools. Everything's ready to go. I just need you to log into it and do the work." That sounds simple, but the EPC for years and years, forever, has always controlled all of those things.
Correct.
And so therefore they're saying, well, that some of the things that were typically in my control are not in my control anymore. I'm concerned. How well are you going to support that? Do you have administrators? You know, our last podcast was on application administrators. So are you supporting that with just IT folks? Or are you supporting that with real application administrators? And a lot of owners haven't really had that skill set in the past. So I think that's one thing is, or how well are you going to admin it? And in a good scenario, this owner operator really has to actually be able to speak to their credibility a bit and explain to the EPC how they're going to have the right level of expertise, the right amount of support. They're going to understand the urgency of all of the requests, because ultimately you're still going to want to hold that EPC to a schedule and a budget.
Yeah, that's incredibly important. And I would say that needs to be a very large, not a large, but a very key part of your strategy is your admin support. How are you supporting this environment? And it goes both ways. How are you going to support it for your projects, for your EPCs? How are you going to support it for operations? Both of those have to work hand in hand together.
Yeah, I would also say that the engineering companies are going to say, okay, the first level of support is one thing. Making the apps run, making them available. Number one, you have to be able to do that.
You have to be able to do that.
Number two, what about all the secret stuff I had behind the scenes that made my work excellent? You know what I mean? What about my special reporting tools? What about my special widgets that I had over here that checked my quality and did all that sort of stuff? And so to me, in an ideal scenario, not only does the owner show that they are prepared to support it administratively, but they show they understand that more nuanced level of good versus great, or you know what I mean? And they support that and say, okay, understand you're going to need access to APIs. You're going to need data extractions. You're going to need integrations. We will support you in doing that, because most of the time the EP will assume that this owner doesn't have that knowledge, especially the second level knowledge for the harder stuff.
Sometimes the owner doesn't have that knowledge.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean that can be a problem. Sometimes the owner just doesn't have the resources or the knowledge to support that. So then they have to either build the knowledge or go find the knowledge somewhere. Where generally the EPCs, or traditionally, they already have that knowledge because of the traditional way that projects have flown.
Well, and yeah, and we talked about what is an application administrator. We haven't gotten to the part about what is the special reporting analysis perspective, right? So when we talk about an administrator, they're your fairly traditional knowledge base to run these type of tools. But on the EPC side, there's a special other persona, which is a reporting specialist, a programming specialist, an automation specialist that writes little scripts and widgets and figures stuff out. And you want to support, you don't want to cut that off, right? You don't want to support that. You maybe don't want to let that go unchecked and say, oh, well, in this space, yeah, you can have database access and you can do anything you want. You don't really want to say that, but you want to say, I want to give you similar level abilities. Let's talk about what you need in order to make that happen.
Yeah. You definitely don't want to cut that off. You want to support that and make them just as efficient as they would be working in their own environment or their own system.
Because you got to admit, when these hosted systems were first rolled out, they were not rolled out great. If you talk 10, 15 years ago, they were rolled out ironclad. You could hardly get into them. Some of them you needed, the little fobs to like specially get the right.
They're still not all rolled out great, right?
Yeah.
It depends on how they're rolled out. If they're rolled out with a good strategy in mind that is going to support both project and operations, and they have what I would consider domain knowledge involved, so engineering and design knowledge involved when they're setting that up, well then it seems to go well. It actually can be a benefit to the EPC because then it takes some of the burden of managing those systems off of the EPC.
Yeah.
Right? However, if they're rolled out from just a strictly IT perspective,
they're usually locked down a little too much.
They're usually terrible.
Yeah.
It's a horrible time for everybody. Straight up terrible.
Not having a good time.
No, if you just roll it out from an IT perspective, then no, it's terrible. They don't focus on the part that they miss on that is how do projects actually get executed, right? That's the part that they miss. And unfortunately, the only way to know that is to actually have lived in a project execution world. I mean, I don't know if they teach that. And when I say a project execution, I'm talking specifically an engineering project, because lots of people are like, hey, I've done projects before. And you're like, yeah, that's an IT development project. That's not building a plant.
Well, the application administrator person that we described in our last discussion grew up generally on this side of the fence. But some of those people have migrated over here or made themselves available through third parties. And those third parties and those folks have come here and said, look, we can do this and own it by the owner. But we have to do it with respect. We have to do it with the same mentality that we had within the EPC. In a newer project, the contract may say, hey, this is going to be an owner-hosted project. So the handover is actually changed because all we really are doing is we're enabling the system, and you guys come in and do your job for a long time, for years. You come in and do your work, and then you're going to exit, and then we're gonna own it. There really isn't a handover. You don't have to package it.
You don't have to package it and hand it over, and that's the beauty of it, right? Is if it is set up correctly, what you're saying, these guys come into this system, they do their work, however long that project may go on, and then at the end of it, they're not handing information over to the owner. It's already built and in the owner's environment, so they're just not having access to that environment anymore.
Yeah, they're getting approval. It says, you finished it, I approved it, we're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
There's no need to package it.
There's no need to package
Already
it.
exists.
There's no need to do like a traditional handover. And on top of that, it helps alleviate a lot of things, because there's a lot of organizations out there, and I'm not going to knock on all of them, but there's a lot of standardizations in how you handle data, how you're going to handle data going from a project to an owner, right? How you're going to do that. But if you're already working in a data-centric environment and you're already working together, then the standardization's already there.
You build it into the tools.
You build it into the tool, right?
Yeah.
You build it into the apps. You build it into your data strategy. It's already there. So, and it's specific to what you already want as an owner. So you're already integrating into your other environments, right? Into your document control, into your asset management, and your ops and maintenance programs. It's already being integrated. So there's no reason to say, hey, I need a specific data handover criteria. No, you built that into the apps, you built that into the environment. You're just giving your vendors or your contractors access to work in that environment.
Yeah. Well, and then that sets you up really well for brownfield, for managing the plant.
100%.
Because
then when this EPC goes away, the project gets done, and a year later, you have another one that comes in. This one goes away, right? Main project's done. This guy comes in. It's all set up.
just continues right on.
He just continues right on. And he has all access to all the latest and greatest data that he can need.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. So the owner here takes some responsibility for the technology and for the strategy and for the support. They also take some financial responsibility because they have to supply that support, right? Whereas in the past, the EPC would support the project and they would supply the administrators and that cost. The cost would still be there. It would be in the project and the owner would pay the bills, but you're shifting some of that cost now. You're saying, hey, there was a handful of people on this job that were running the tools. They have moved over here and they are running the tools from this side. So there's a shift in cost. There's a little bit less in the project and it's over here on the ownership side, right?
There is a little shift in cost because you'd have the owner is going to have to take on this cost of the administrative support, right? They're going to have to take on this environment cost. That cost was always there.
Yeah.
So that cost was primarily right here in each one of these EPCs.
And it was getting charged.
And it was getting
to the
charged to the owner. It was just hidden under this project cost. Hey, this EPC is going to provide you this great environment that they're going to work in to execute the project. Okay, well, they're charging you for that. It's just hidden in that project, right? Now what you're saying is, hey, we're going to get rid of that. We're going to bring that, because it's super important, right? It's very important. We're going to bring that to the forefront. We want it to benefit our operations. We're going to bring it right here and set it right out in front of everybody. And so now those costs are being seen. And I think right now there's a transition going on in the industry where these are being highlighted now. And they're like, okay, well, wait a minute. Some owners are like, hey, wait, we didn't know those costs existed. What are we going to do about it? Not that they're saying we don't want to pay for it. They already knew they were. But how are we going to pay for it now that it's out in the open?
Yeah.
Right? Is that a CapEx cost? Is that an OpEx cost? Is it something in between, right? Those are the discussions that we're in now.
Yeah. Okay. And in this case, we like to call this zero handover.
That's the idea.
Owner hosted cloud, zero handover.
The idea is that there would be as little as handover as possible. Is mitigated all the way down as much as you could. So like we were saying, they do their work in this space, and when they're done, they just lose access to the data workspace.
Yeah.
And that's the handover. The handover is there's an approval process to make sure all the as-built-in was done, make sure all the data requirements are met as far as what is built out, all your deliverable requirements are met, and then you just say, okay, you're done with that project. Access cut.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's good enough.
Problem solved, huh?
Problem solved. But the benefits, in my opinion, outweigh some of the challenges up front because of the integration into the actual, and I don't know if you're going to call this, but this would be like the actual digital twin, maybe.
Yeah. So when those things integrate together and they work seamlessly, and I can go from an engineering drawing to a work order to a control system trend, then that to me is your informational digital twin. And that guy depends upon having something good to latch onto. And the problem we're seeing in the older method, the older handover method, is that when you just hand over a bunch of paper or a bunch of systems that don't really connect, they aren't consistent, this connection with other business struggles. And so this is a solution. It's a handover solution, but really it's to build a better foundation to make this happen, which ultimately, if it's a 5-year project, this facility may run for 50 years. And so you're looking long term, like setting it up for success, setting your technicians who need an accurate drawing up for success, setting the equipment owners who need good understanding about how it was designed, making that information talk together so that it's all linked and that your procedures and your work orders all are set up for success.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think some of the challenges in today's time, what's happening now is they're thinking that we talked about AI a bunch of times. There's a bunch of challenges going on over here with that data, I guess, integrity of what you're saying, and they're thinking that, hey, AI is just going to come in and it's going to link data from my dock control up to my asset management. It's going to link my maintenance and ops. When in my mind, they're kind of missing the boat or missing the forest for the trees, if that's a term, because the data that these are needing is coming from this engineering workspace.
So the better you make that, the better everything is going to be.
Right. The better you make this, the better all of that is going to be.
Agreed.
And I think that's part of the problem. So you're operating on two fronts. One is you have some resistance on this side because of the traditional workflows. And then now even internally over here, you got a little bit of resistance because you got somebody saying, well, AI is going to solve a lot of my problems that I'm seeing today as far as your data integration or data integrity. Right?
Yeah, I would agree. You've got some tools, some information management type tools that are coming in and saying, that looks like a lot of work. Just avoid that.
Don't do that.
I'll fix all of it on my own with my super AI. And it's like, okay, yeah, that thing can help, but don't dismiss. This is still the biggest value capture you can have is just making sure those systems are built the same, the structure's the same, they're going to work forever, they're going to support your brownfield, and they're for authoring. These are not just for gathering.
That's the problem.
They're for authoring.
Not just the gathering, right?
All of your new MOCs you're going to do, all of your debottlenecking projects,
any follow-on
everything
projects.
Forever is going to be supported by that nucleus of the whole facility, the digital foundation for that whole facility.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I wrote up here just because I had to that data is the new oil. I think I saw that on a shirt or something somewhere. And I agree. It's kind of like, hey, let's get this information, and then the value that it will add to this would be substantial. And I mean, we could give actual numbers, but we actually have worked in that aspect where we're building out the foundation of this and then providing that to operations, and have seen immense value created out of that. Created out of being able to better organize the information and document control in your asset management, in your maintenance organizations, like you were saying earlier, and even in your processes. So
Yep.
So yeah, I see it going well.
Okay. Well, that's part 2. I don't think there's a part 3 right now.
I don't think so.
That's our vision for how to improve handover. And so
Zero handover.
All right. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Let us know if you have any ideas.
Don't let handover be a beach.